First story. I do 99% of the work for our family. But my husband treats me like a maid and had the nerve to call me lazy when I asked for help. It feels like I've reached a breaking point, and I don't even know where to start anymore. I'm a 36-year-old woman, married to my husband, who's 39, for the past 7 years. When we first met, he was in the military, and I had a demanding but rewarding career. For most of our marriage, I either matched his income or earned more. Even then, I was the one juggling cooking, cleaning, and taking care of our 3 kids, all under 6 years old. I managed to hire a weekly cleaner and a part-time nanny, but the bulk of the household responsibilities still fell on me. My husband would outright refuse tasks like bedtime routines, claiming he just doesn't like doing it. He also has a short temper, which made me the default parent whenever things got tough. A few years ago, I started to burn out. Between my job, which often required evening and weekend hours, and non-stop parenting duties, I was stretched thin. I remember sitting in my car one night after showing a house, crying because I felt like I hadn't had a moment to myself in weeks. My husband didn't seem to notice or care. He was comfortable in his routine of leaving everything outside of his job to me. Things improved slightly after a long talk, but it was more of a band-aid than a real solution. Last year, everything changed again. My husband retired from the military and landed a high-paying job. We decided it made sense for me to leave my career and focus on managing our rental properties, a franchise we recently bought, and starting an online MBA program to help grow our business. I was also supposed to take over as the primary caretaker for our kids and the household. At first, it sounded like a dream. Time to focus on the kids, pursue education, and build something together. But that's not how it turned out. What actually happened was that every single responsibility landed on my shoulders. Everything. I became the only one cleaning, cooking, scheduling doctor's appointments, running errands, handling school forms, and taking care of our dog and cats. I manage all our finances, oversee our investments, deal with contractors, and keep track of the kids' extracurriculars. My husband, on the other hand, does none of it. He won't even take out the trash or replace a light bulb. If something needs fixing that I can't do myself, I'm the one calling and coordinating a handyman. To make things worse, his new job is remote and pays even more, which you'd think would free up time for him to help. He even told me he'd pitch in with tasks like taking the kids to their sports practices or handling the occasional contractor call. But that hasn't happened. Instead, he's taken on the attitude that, because he makes more money, his only job is to provide financially. He barely interacts with the kids, 5 minutes of play before retreating to his phone or hiding in the bathroom. Piles of his dirty clothes are everywhere, and dirty dishes appear in random places. He doesn't lift a finger unless I beg or plead, and even then, it's met with eye rolls or half-hearted effort. Tonight was the breaking point. He asked me to handle the benefits enrollment for his new job. I told him he could do it during work hours since it's directly tied to his employment. I also pointed out that I'm not up to date on the changes to our insurance since he left the military, so he'd need to check on that first. His response? He looked at me like I was completely incompetent, disgusted that I didn't already have the information. When I explained that I've been overwhelmed and unable to get clear answers, he acted like I was lazy for not figuring it out. I tried to calmly explain how much I have on my plate and how little support I feel. I listed everything I handle daily, from the kids to our business to the household. His response? He sneered and said, "If you were really taking care of the house, it wouldn't be such a mess." Our house isn't perfect. Show me one that is when you have 3 kids under 6, but it's far from dirty or chaotic. I work hard to keep it tidy, but his OCD tendencies demand a level of perfection that's impossible without help, and he refuses to provide any. Every time I try to open up about how I feel, it turns into a fight. He zeroes in on one poorly worded phrase, like when I said, "Sometimes I feel like you don't lift a finger." He seized on the word never, angrily throwing it back at me as if that invalidated everything else I said. It's exhausting trying to have a conversation where my feelings aren't twisted or dismissed. To make matters worse, he constantly brings up new projects for me to take on, as if I don't already have enough. He wants chickens. He wants a garden. He wants me to take a sourdough baking class. He even brought up getting a livestock guardian puppy, all things he expects me to manage alone. The irony? When I went out of town for a week, leaving him alone with the kids, he couldn't handle it. Laundry piled up, takeout containers filled the trash, and he didn't clean a thing. The kids were in full-day summer camp, so he had all day to himself and still couldn't manage. Yet he has the audacity to act like I'm not doing enough. I don't know how to make him understand that I'm drowning here. Every time I try to explain, it's turned into an argument about how I'm overreacting or ungrateful. I'm at my wit's end, and I don't know how to get through to him. How can I make him see that I'm not a robot, that I need help, and that our partnership needs to change? Second story. My long-term boyfriend of 20 years betrayed me with a 23-year-old student he groomed. His career, reputation, and our relationship are in ruins. When someone you trust for decades betrays you, the pain is unlike anything else. It's a mix of disbelief, anger, sadness, and this gnawing question: was any of it ever real? That's where I've found myself, trying to make sense of a relationship that spanned 20 years, now shattered by a betrayal I never saw coming. My boyfriend, a 63-year-old retired university professor, cheated on me. A 58-year-old woman with a 23-year-old student. Yes, you read that right, someone not even half his age. It all started unraveling one night when we were sitting together. He had been drinking, which wasn't unusual, but something about his behavior felt off. His phone kept buzzing, and when I casually asked who it was, he got defensive. That was my first red flag. I insisted he show me, and after some resistance, he handed it over. What I saw made my stomach drop. Sexually suggestive texts exchanged between him and this young woman. At first, he tried to downplay it, calling it a moment of weakness and an emotional affair that had only been going on for 2 months. But as the conversation unfolded, the details got worse. He admitted she had been pursuing him for a year, flirting during lab sessions and at university events. It wasn't until a night out with colleagues where alcohol flowed freely that he finally gave in. His excuse? He thought I wasn't interested in him anymore. He said I'd been distant because I was mourning my father's death and spending a lot of time helping my mother adjust to assisted living. He claimed he felt neglected, even though in my mind, things between us had been fine. We were still going to concerts, taking vacations, hosting parties, and being intimate. He never communicated any dissatisfaction to me. Not once. To make matters worse, he confessed he had no plans to stop the affair anytime soon. His intention was to phase it out after she graduated, as if that somehow made it less despicable. That night, I couldn't just let it slide. I reported him to the university's department chairs. The complaint escalated quickly to Title IX investigations. At first, he tried to cover his tracks, but then the girl's boyfriend also found incriminating texts and exposed them. With no way out, the truth came spilling out. The student admitted their relationship was consensual, and my boyfriend was given an ultimatum: retire immediately or be fired. He chose retirement, but it was far from graceful. His email was revoked, there was no retirement celebration, and the accolades typically given to long-serving professors were withheld. His reputation, which he had carefully cultivated over decades, crumbled. People began calling, questioning his sudden departure, but he refused to tell anyone the real reason. Behind closed doors, he fell apart. One moment, he was crying and saying he didn't deserve to live. The next, he was minimizing what he'd done, talking about returning to work someday, as if nothing had happened. He's in complete denial, and frankly, it's infuriating. What's even more disturbing is that, in hindsight, there were signs all along. He was always sexually inappropriate, making off-color jokes and comments that I warned him could get him in trouble. He's also struggled with addictions to porn and alcohol, though he never admitted it outright. Looking back, I wonder how I didn't see this coming. Despite everything, he's begging me to stay in his life. He says I'm the only one who truly knows him, the only one who hasn't abandoned him. But I can't shake the anger and disgust I feel. How could he risk his career, his reputation, and our relationship for something so shallow? And why didn't he have the decency to end things with me first, if he wanted to pursue someone else? He's trying to make changes now, cutting back on drinking, quitting porn, spending more time with his grandchildren, and working on projects around the house. But it all feels too little, too late. This isn't the first time he's cheated. He did the same to his ex-wife, which is why I never married him, despite being together for 2 decades. I can't deny that I still care about him on some level. I pity him even. He's a broken man, battling his demons, but he refuses to seek professional help. He's left me to navigate this mess of emotions on my own. Anger, heartbreak, and this deep sense of betrayal. I've mourned our relationship, but I'm also mourning the realization that I was never truly loved. Not by him, and not by my ex-husband before him. That truth stings, but it also gives me clarity. I don't need him, or anyone, to define my worth. I'm financially secure, independent, and ready to move forward, alone, if that's what it takes. As for him, he's living in the ruins of the life he built. Most people now suspect the real reason behind his abrupt retirement, and the respect he once commanded has turned into whispers of scandal. He's paying the price for his choices, and honestly, I think he deserves every bit of it. The hardest part is reconciling the man I thought I knew with the man he's revealed himself to be. I don't know what our future holds, if I'll be able to forgive him enough to remain friends, or if I'll walk away entirely. But one thing is certain, the trust we had is gone, and I'm not sure it can ever be rebuilt. Third story. AITA for kissing my ex-wife's late brother's widow after offering support, even though she accused me of disrespecting her family and demanded I end it. When my ex-wife and I divorced a few years ago, it wasn't on good terms. Her affair shattered what I thought was a strong marriage, and after everything, I decided to move on without looking back. For years, we had no contact at all, until last year when her brother Alex passed away unexpectedly. Despite our history, I knew how close she and Alex had been, so I reached out to offer my condolences. Alex wasn't just her brother, he was married to Lily, someone I'd been friends with since middle school. Lily and I had a long-standing friendship that had survived both time and life's challenges. After hearing about Alex's death, I also called Lily to check in on her. She was devastated, as anyone would be, and in the middle of our conversation, she invited me to the funeral. I agreed, both to pay my respects to Alex and to support Lily during such a heartbreaking time. At the funeral, Lily stayed by my side almost the entire time. Her grief was palpable, and while there were plenty of people around to comfort her, it was clear she felt overwhelmed. I did my best to be there for her, lending an ear whenever she needed to talk, or simply sitting quietly when words weren't enough. We ended up sharing stories about Alex, laughing at some of his quirks even in the midst of all the sadness. It felt natural, a reminder of the bond we'd shared long before life became so complicated. A few months later, Lily reached out again. She texted me late one evening, saying she was struggling and needed someone to talk to. That first meeting was simple. We grabbed coffee and sat at the park, talking about everything and nothing at all. She admitted that she'd been having a hard time coping, feeling like the world had moved on while she was stuck in her grief. By the end of the day, she thanked me for being there. That one meeting turned into a regular thing. Every week, we'd find time to catch up, whether it was over coffee, a walk, or just sitting in the car talking. Slowly but surely, she seemed to be finding pieces of herself again. Then one day, Lily suggested we try something different and go out to dinner. It was her way of reclaiming some normalcy in her life, and I was happy to go along with it. Dinner became another weekly tradition, with us exploring new restaurants each Saturday. One night, as we were leaving a restaurant, Lily kissed me. It was unexpected, but not unwelcome. That kiss marked a turning point in our relationship. After months of helping each other heal, it felt like something more was beginning to blossom between us. Still, I was cautious. Lily was navigating a storm of emotions, and I didn't want to rush into anything. She brought up the idea of taking things further a few times, but I always reminded her that we needed to move slowly. The last thing I wanted was for her to mistake her feelings for a quick fix to her grief. Last week, everything came to a head. Lily and I were having dinner at a quiet little Italian restaurant we'd discovered. As we left, she kissed me in the parking lot. It was a tender, private moment, or so I thought. Later that night, I got a text from my ex-wife Julia. Apparently, she'd been at the same restaurant and had seen us kiss. Her text was a mix of anger and disbelief, and before I could even process it, she called me. The second I answered, she launched into a tirade. Julia accused me of being disrespectful to Alex's memory and called my relationship with Lily inappropriate. She even started crying at one point, saying I was dishonoring her brother and the family. I stayed calm but firm. I told Julia that my personal life was no longer any of her business and that she had no right to interfere. She tried to argue, but I cut the conversation short and hung up. Was it harsh? Maybe, but I didn't see why I owed her an explanation. Since then, I've been replaying everything in my head. I get that this situation is complicated. Alex was her brother, and emotions are naturally running high. Maybe she feels like I've crossed some invisible boundary. But from my perspective, Lily and I are two people who found comfort in each other after a shared loss. It doesn't feel wrong to me, but I can't deny that the circumstances make it messy. So now I'm left wondering, was I wrong to shut Julia down? Could I have handled it differently? Or is she out of line for trying to dictate who I can and can't see? I can't change what's happened, but part of me wishes there was a way to navigate this without all the tension. At the same time, I stand by what I said. My life is no longer her concern. Maybe some situations are just too complicated to have clear answers.